She said it was one weekend on the coast, just once, like a stain you could rinse out if you didn't look too hard. When she said it, the wicks of the lavender candles popped like tiny gunshots, and that sound is the only reason I didn't drop the coffee mug in my hand. I'm Trevor, 35. I pour lattes in the mornings and draw until my knuckles ache at night. My apartment is a second-floor box above a Thai place that smells like basil and sugar when they pop the patio door. Back then, though, I lived 3 miles west on a quiet street with a maple that never learned to be quiet in fall. I lived with Haley, who used to leave lipstick on my travel cup and grocery lists on our fridge and sometimes looked at me like I was something warm in winter. She worked in marketing, which meant she spoke fluent optimism and could file down the sharp edges on anything she brought into a room, even this. One weekend on the coast, she said, staring at the grain of our table like the answer was hidden inside the wood. I messed up, but it was only once. I didn't want to lie to you anymore. There was the promise baked in that if I believed in smallness, one weekend, one mistake, maybe the mountain would shrink. I tried to stand inside that promise. For a minute, I even heard the ocean, or thought I did, some phantom surf curling behind her words. When? I asked. She swallowed and pulled in a breath like it hurt. February, that big storm. I told you I was at Jenna's. I remembered the storm. The city slowed to a hush, like someone put palms on the world and told it to breathe. I had sketched the maple that night, its bare fingers tapping our window. I had texted her a picture of the drawing. She sent a heart. I put a little heart next to the tree's trunk and felt ridiculous and happy at the same time. I'm telling you because I want us to fix this, she said. I don't want to carry it alone. People say confession is a door. Maybe it is. Maybe the hinges are oiled with hope. But when we walked through that door, the room on the other side was stale and crowded and smelled like those candles we kept lighting to make the apartment feel like a spa instead of a place where the truth limped around. Couples therapy started on a Tuesday. Our therapist's office was 3 stories up in a building with brick that had learned how to hold stories. The waiting room had gray chairs and a ficus pretending to be a tree. A white noise machine hissed in the corner like a seashell. Haley held my hand with the gentleness people use for old books. In the room, she was the version of herself I'd met at a street fair 5 years earlier, the one who laughed with her whole throat and told me my little zine about birds made her cry. She was calm. She said the right things. I broke trust. I'm willing to do the work. She dabbed at the corners of her eyes with a tissue she never really used. The therapist nodded in the way therapists nod, like she wanted to slow the world down enough for us to notice we were in it. At home, it was different. At home, words wandered around without shoes and tracked dirt on everything. At home, she'd look at me and say, "You're making this bigger than it is," or "You use your feelings like a magnifying glass." Once, when I asked about the guy, his name, or whether he liked coffee or what, anything to make him less of a ghost, she said I was a victim of my own dramatization. That phrase sat between us like a splintered chair we refused to move. Our evenings were scented like spa brochures. We lit therapeutic candles because the therapist suggested rituals, something to mark the time as ours. Sandalwood, lavender, sage. The flames did their best. Sometimes we did too. We took long walks through Laurelhurst after dinner. We read aloud from some book about rebuilding. We even had a rule, no phones after 9. But the quiet wasn't clean. It was a quiet full of rot, like a house with a new coat of paint over wet wood. Little things started to feel like answers to questions I hadn't realized I'd asked. There was a receipt tucked into a cookbook for a wine bar on the coast highway, dated the same weekend as the storm. "Tasting flight for 2!" There was sand in the pocket of her raincoat, the fine kind that clings and follows you home. She shrugged and said it was from some trail with Jenna months earlier. She said it easily, like it was a fact the world should accept without checking. On Sundays, I worked the early shift at the cafe. Opening the shop means letting the machines wake up slow. It means watching milk bloom in steel pitchers and listening to the grinder's first scream of the day. It means being the first person to say good morning to a whole neighborhood. I love that work. I love the way I can point to a cup and say, "I made that. It's small, but it's mine." After therapy started, I put in for more opens and some closes too, so there was less empty time at home to tiptoe around all the words we weren't saying right. One night after a session, we stopped for groceries. In the candle aisle, she stood a long time sniffing glass jars like a bee moving flower to flower. "What about eucalyptus?" she asked. "What about truth?" I said. Her eyes flashed and then tiredness poured over her. "Don't do this here!" "Do what?" "Make it into a performance." It was one weekend. It's funny how one can get heavy if you have to carry it every day. One starts feeling like a lie that learned to put on a smaller coat. The therapist asked us to keep a timeline. Just what you remember, she said. Facts keep the feelings from swallowing you. So we sat at the table one night and pulled out pens like we were drawing a map back to the place we first trusted each other. Haley wrote the name of the beach town and the month and then got quiet. I wrote down the storm, the blackout, the pizza we burned at Jenna's, which is what I had believed. I wrote down the drawing of the maple. Anything else? I asked. That's it, she said. Who is he? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. She stared hard enough at the paper that I wondered if she was willing it to fill itself in. He's from work, she said finally, not my team. What does he do? Does it matter? You keep asking if things matter, like I'm trying to win some debate. She pressed her thumb to her temple and closed her eyes. I'm trying to keep us from breaking. Later that week, I found a hotel key card in the junk drawer where batteries go to die. It was plain, white, with a faint seahorse embossed near the edge. The name of the place wasn't printed, just a number, 415. I balanced it in my palm until the plastic warmed. In the morning, I slid it back where I found it and said nothing. We had agreed not to go through each other's things. I wasn't going through. I had tripped. I told my sister, Liv, because secrets like that turn your bones heavy if you try to carry them alone. She listened without fixing. You don't have to make meaning out of every crumb, she said, but you don't have to pretend crumbs aren't bread either. At therapy, we brought the timeline. Our therapist nodded and said we were doing hard work. On the way home, Haley turned down the radio and said, I wish you wouldn't perform your pain in there. I, what? You tell the parts that make me look like a villain. You leave out the parts where you detached years ago. You talk about the coffee shop like it's a church, and I'm the devil for not kneeling. I asked for your phone after 9, I said. I asked for a weekend where we don't talk about your campaigns and KPIs like they were our children. She laughed then, a sound without humor. You want me to be less? You always did. I tried to swallow the thing that rose in me. I want you to be here. That Friday, I closed the shop and met my friend Mateo at the bar where the bartender knows my name because it's written on my apron. I told him I was trying not to become the guy who listens to sad records at full volume and calls it healing. Don't knock the classics, he said. Sometimes you need to sit in the storm. It's one weekend, I said, hearing how small I sounded. Or it's the tip of whatever the opposite of an iceberg is. A volcano? Sure, he said. A hot, nasty truth. I didn't need more evidence. I needed the math to add up with the story. But the world kept handing me fractions. A credit card alert pinged my phone for a joint account I barely looked at. It was a charge at a boutique hotel in that same beach town. The date was 3 weeks after the storm. I asked Haley, trying to keep my voice flat as a ruler. She said it was a hold that finally posted from February. It happens, she said, like she was the bank. Later, I drove out to the coast alone. The highway ran like a string pulled taut, and the ocean ignored me in that way the ocean does. I parked 2 blocks from a small hotel painted the exact color of a forgiveness you don't deserve. In the lobby, a bowl of green apples sweated under a skylight. I asked the clerk if they had key cards with a seahorse. Old design, she said, from last year. I nodded like I was a man who had collected a fun fact and would now go home. I walked the pier. I watched a couple split a basket of fries and feed each other like stoned teenagers. I tried to imagine loving Haley again on the other side of this hump. I tried to imagine not loving her like flipping a switch. When I got home, the candles were lit. Sandalwood. The apartment smelled like a place where good choices happened. I was worried, Haley said. You didn't text. I took a drive. Her mouth went tight. To the coast? Yeah. She stared at me and something changed in her eyes, like she realized I wasn't going to swallow every half answer she offered. You said we wouldn't spiral, she said. We said we would tell the truth when we had it. You're addicted to pain. You're addicted to calling my pain a choice. The thing about couples therapy is it can turn you into lawyers. You start filing exhibits, you look for witnesses, you memorize your lines. We brought everything to the table but the thing that would have made it simple. She wanted to confess and then move on, like the point of the confession was the moving on. I wanted the confession to be a beginning, not an end. The first major crack came when Jenna, the friend with the sofa Haley had supposedly slept on during that storm, found me outside the cafe after my shift. She stood there with her knit cap in her hands like it was a hat at a funeral. "I hate being in the middle," she said. "You don't have to be." "She asked me not to say anything," Jenna said, then winced at her own words. "But I can't hold it." "You don't owe me this," I said, because I was trying to be a person who didn't demand proof of love from strangers. "She went there twice," Jenna said, "once in February, once in March, and then—" She stopped. "And then in April," she said, so soft the month barely made it into the world. "I thought it was over. I'm sorry. I thought if they burned it out fast, maybe. I'm sorry." I heard the words the way you hear a train when you live a block from the tracks. The first week, it shakes the air out of your lungs. By month 3, you keep reading your book. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. The truth hurt less than the half-truths. The half-truths came with the tax of hope. That night, in our kitchen, the candles were off. The room smelled like lemon dish soap and the rain that crept in whenever we left the window cranked. We stood a few feet apart like people at a party pretending they hadn't come together. "Every time you add half a word," I said, "it doesn't heal anything. It breaks something new." Her mouth tightened and softened like she was considering 2 different versions of herself. "I was scared to say it all," she said. "I was scared you would leave." "You don't get to blame my leaving on your fear of my leaving. It wasn't like I planned God, Trevor." She pressed her palms to the counter like she needed the laminate to keep her from floating off. "I felt invisible. I felt like a coworker in my own house. I told you, and you drew a map to my shame and made me walk it every night." "I made you walk with me," I said. "There's a difference." She looked at me then, fully, and the soft in her eyes went hard. "You are a victim of your dramatization," she said, and the silence that followed was louder than any shout we could have thrown. "So in there," I said, pointing at the general direction of the therapist's building, "I am a person whose pain makes sense, and in here, I'm dramatic." "In there you listen," she said. "In here you slam the drawers and count the receipts." "I counted because you kept changing the total." She rubbed her thumb over the stove knob, a little nervous tic she'd had since we moved in. "It was 3 weekends," she said. "I ended it in April. I swear to you it's over. I swear to you I want us." I waited for the relief to wash in. It didn't. What I felt was the weight settling into me the way a barbell drops clean and the floor understands it's going to hold. It wasn't the number. It was the drip of it, the slow pour of truth that kept the wound new. "I can't do half-truths anymore," I said. "So what? We burn it down?" "I don't know," I said, and I meant it. That was the scariest part. Not rage, not grief, the not knowing. The way the future went foggy, like a bathroom mirror after a shower you take because you don't know what else to do. We didn't burn it down that night. We went to therapy the next afternoon and presented the new number like a math problem we'd finally solved. The therapist asked questions gently. Haley answered them like a woman who had wrestled the worst part of herself into something that could pass for tame. I sat there and nodded at all the right moments and felt like I was in a play where the set was expensive and the acting was honest and the script had no ending anyone would believe. After the session, we walked the river path. Geese heckled us from the grass like we were trespassing on their idea of peace. "I want to be better," she said. "I want to be yours." "I don't know how to believe you," I said. "Do you want to?" she asked. That question. I still hear it. Do you want to? Love is a lot of wanting, but wanting isn't the same as trusting. Wanting is the spark. Trust is the house. Weeks turned over. We did the things couples do when they are trying. Date nights constructed like school projects, check-ins scheduled like dentist appointments, sex that started tender and ended in tears we pretended were about joy. She left her phone on the counter face up. I tried not to keep score. I failed. Scorekeeping is easy when you feel like you're losing. One night in early summer, I got sick of the smell of candles and walked out onto the fire escape. The maple on our street had gone from hands to hands holding leaves, and the wind made them clap. I watched a couple kiss by the curb. They were young or drunk, maybe both. I thought about a sketch I'd done months earlier, a spiral staircase that went nowhere. I used it as a poster for the coffee shop open mic. I had titled it, "How to Climb Without Moving." It felt like we were living inside that drawing. I didn't move out then. I didn't even pack a box. I'm not a fast mover. I'm a lingerer. I rest in doorways. I reread paragraphs. I stand in the cereal aisle too long. But I started looking at Craigslist. I started standing longer on the corner near that building over the cafe a few neighborhoods away, the one with the big windows and the ugly carpet and the rent. I could just barely swing if I opened 5 mornings a week and took all the sketch gigs I usually said no to because they were for breweries that wanted skulls and skeletons, and I get it, people love skulls. But man, how many skulls does one city need? The last therapy session we went to, Haley wore a dress she knew I liked, blue with dots. She looked like a night sky that had learned how to keep me looking. In the room, she apologized without being prompted. "I'm sorry for minimizing," she said. "I'm sorry for telling the truth in pieces." I felt something in me loosen at her words. The therapist gave us space inside that loosening. We walked out to the parking lot and stood in the dusk, not touching. "We could do it," she said, and she meant recovery, the way people mean a road trip when they print directions and buy snacks and ignore the weather. "Maybe," I said, "but I don't think I can do it here." "Where?" she asked. "Someplace where silence isn't lying," I said. That week, I took the studio above the coffee shop. The landlord was a guy with cargo shorts and an allergy to punctuation. He gave me a key after I handed him a sweaty cashier's check. The studio smelled like dust and the ghost of cigarette smoke. The windows were big enough for morning to walk right in without knocking. When I told Haley, she sat on the edge of our bed and looked at me like I was fog, not a person. "Weather? So that's it?" she asked. "You're giving up?" "I'm not burning you down," I said. "I'm not telling your boss. I'm not throwing your things out the window for the neighborhood raccoons to model. I'm not anything loud." "That's worse," she said. "At least a fight means you care." "I care," I said. "I care enough to stop caring like this." "Please don't make this about your dignity," she said, and the words were so strange I almost laughed. "What do you want it to be about?" I asked. Us." "It is," I said. "This is the only version of us that doesn't make me smaller." We didn't divide our friends. We didn't hire lawyers to weaponize our stuff. We divided the books like people splitting a pie when neither of them is really hungry. I took the bird zines. She took the first editions. I left her the blue dotted dress without touching it. On my last night in the apartment, I cooked pasta and left it on the stove for her, because care doesn't disappear when romance does. I wrote a note on a post-it. It said, "Eat." She texted a heart, the kind with no shine on it. The studio above the cafe became mine slowly. I moved in with 10 boxes and a mattress that made an embarrassing sound if you sat too fast. I set my desk near the window so Dawn could find me drawing before the city came awake. At night, I painted big, messy canvases that I swore I'd never show anyone and then hung them anyway because I needed the walls to hold my noise. The floor vibrated each morning when the espresso machine below decided it was time to sing. I learned the rhythms of the alley. The delivery truck that backed in at 6:30 and hissed like a tired dragon. The kid who tagged the dumpster every few days with a name that looked like a secret no one had earned. The way the pigeons negotiated with the gulls like union reps. I also learned to sit inside a kind of quiet that didn't scratch. The first week, I kept turning toward the door like I'd hear Haley's key, the little jangle I knew better than my own breath. The second week, I stopped doing that. I still slept badly, but the bad sleep had fewer teeth. The third week, I drew my hand holding a hotel key card. I added a seahorse I made up. It looked nothing like the real one, and exactly like the idea I needed to set down. I saw Haley once more at the farmer's market on Belmont. She was with Jenna, which felt like God's joke or grace depending on how I stood. We did that polite dance where you make your face a room with good lighting. She asked about the cafe. I asked about her job. It was a conversation between two people who used to practice kissing on movie nights and now practice being neighbors. "I'm sorry," she said again, and there was no theater in it, just a person with her palms open. "Me too," I said, and I meant it in a way that included more than regret. I meant it like a nod to the version of us that did okay for a while. I meant it like respect for the years that gave me a chair at the table I now worked at alone. After she left, I bought peaches that smelled like August. I took them back to my studio and ate one over the sink and let the juice run down my wrist. For a second, I felt something close to happy for no reason at all. It startled me. I didn't chase it. I let it stand there, like a shy animal at the edge of a yard. Nights stretched. I painted, I drew, I worked opens, then came home and napped when the alley was quiet. On Saturdays, I taught a kid how to draw hands. He wouldn't stop drawing skulls, and I didn't stop him. "People love what they love," I said, and he nodded like I'd given him permission he didn't know he needed. Sometimes loneliness came in like weather. I didn't fight it with noise anymore. I made tea. I stood at the window. I let the feeling move through me instead of trying to hold it down like a beach ball underwater. That gets exhausting, trying to stay cheerful by force. Turns out quiet isn't the enemy if it's honest. When fall came back around, the maple outside my old place went loud again. I walked that block once and looked up at the windows we used to fog with our laughing. I didn't go to the door. I didn't weigh myself against the life on the other side. I went home to the studio and drew the tree from memory. I got the angles wrong and I didn't fix them. I liked it better that way. I still smell sandalwood sometimes in random places, and maybe I always will. The brain keeps its own cupboards full of unlabeled jars. I don't hate candles anymore. I don't light them either. I don't need scent to tell me how to feel. If you're waiting for the screaming scene, for the public justice, I'm sorry. There wasn't one. I didn't catch the guy in a hallway. I didn't stand on a chair and announce his name to her coworkers like a town crier. I took my dignity out into the night and let the air touch it. It was enough. Now I live above a place that makes espresso like a hymn. I draw until the paint on my nails looks like I fought a tiny, colorful war. I walk the river and don't count the geese. I eat peaches over the sink and don't apologize for the mess. I'm learning how to love a quiet that doesn't have to hide anything. It's not heroic. It's breakfast alone with good toast. It's a key in a door I pay for myself. It's sleep I actually wake up from myself. It's sleep I actually wake up from. I don't know if Haley stays with the person she met on that coast, and it doesn't matter in the way I once required it to. I hope she learned to tell the truth all at once. I hope I don't forget that I can. Would you keep working when the truth arrives in halves, or is one clean-cut kinder in the end? Where do you draw the line between repair and your own self-respect? If this story hits somewhere you recognize, like, comment, and subscribe.